Donation. We're short on time. Some of our board members have to leave to have other commitments. So we're going to try to make real good use of our time today. So we're going to initiate our meeting. We're going to start with the welcoming, and if we could just do quick introductions, go around the room. Sorry,
Adjourn. Hi, Rafael Hernandez, Monterey Major Army Partnership. Ellie Robinson, retired.
David Pacheco, City Council, Seaside.
Mick Erickson, pastor representing Faith Community.
Data Cleary, Chispa.
Henry Espinosa, Monterey County Social Services.
Elsa Jimenez, Monterey County Health Department.
Lisa Berkeley, Councilmember Marina.
Ignacio Velasquez, Mayor, City of Hollister.
Ian Oldham, Mayor of Seaside.
Joe Gunter, Mayor of Salinas.
Lance Walker, Mayor of Greenfield.
I'm Supervisor Luis. So then we're going to go here, and then we'll go around. Oh, go back.
Dan Baldwin, Community Foundation from Monterey County.
Rob Rath, Community Services.
CJ Valenzuela, City of Salinas.
Georgina Alvarez, Chispa. Betsy Wilson.
Kathy Weldon, Fund for Homeless Women.
Mary Arlene Canary, concerned citizen.
Dr. Elmar, Jackie Smith, CHMD, County Community Learning Center.
Laurel D. Alexander, Community Foundation for Monterey County.
Okay, let's jump over there.
Israel with the Homeless Coalition. Roxanne with the Homeless Coalition. Katrina McKenzie with the Homeless Coalition. Alexa Johnson with Housing Resource Center.
Grant Leonard, City of Monterey Housing Office.
Brian Dempsey, City of Seaside.
Brett Stanberry, Veterans Transition Center.
Eric Johnson, R3 Community Homeless Solutions.
Lisa Griffin Burns, Community Homeless Solutions.
Michael Listman, Behavioral Health.
Jill Allen, Dorothy's Place. Erica Parker with Assemblymember Mark Stone's office.
Colleen Courtney with Senator Ronald's office.
Hope Kadima with Orphan Production.
Folks on this side.
Wes White, community enthusiast from Salinas.
Joe McCall, Foxford.
All right. We'll cover everyone. Oh, yes.
Kate Daniels with Gavin Freeman.
All right. Thank you, Kate, for being here. Anyways, Senator Stone and Senator Monica as the representative here. Okay, any additions, modifications to the agenda? Okay, public comments or anything not on today's agenda? Any public comments? Yes. Go ahead. We'll let Mayor Roscoe pass right there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Roscoe. City Gonzalez for being here. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Carter, CSU, and wanted to basically have more conversation and concern of dealing with more homelessness students that are on our campus. We applaud all the activity and efforts that have already been in this point, but what I'm here to have a larger conversation and hope at some point, not today, is to bring to the table about the data that's coming back from the system. So for the California State University system, we have about, 11% is coming back out of the average for all the CSU systems. CSUMB is actually coming with 16%. We're coming higher than the whole average of all 23 systems that are all 23 campuses in the system. That's alarming. So when you're talking about an average of 11% for the CSU system for students who are experiencing homelessness, and us coming in at basically almost 16%, that's something that we really want to be able to hone in on and collaborate with the community and being able to help these students that are trying to make a better life for themselves and investing in their education and investing in the tax dollars and everything else we're spending in the area and actually getting job offers and not being able to take them because they have no affordable housing in the area. So it's something I just want to be able to bring up to the committee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Topic for further discussion in the future. Any other public comments for anything not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. Very quickly, sir.
Yeah, so I'm also a homeless advocate. I was thinking the city's jurisdiction should also worry about what they're going to do for the people who are outside. You know, this is basically for 5% of people. The 95% of people, the policies, the things you need to advocate for would be supporting people who are already outside, you know, organized space, trash, pee-poo, and food in its place. You know, porta potties, showers, dumpsters. I think we should also be supporting people who are outside permanently, not just what's going to come to our programs.
Thank you.
Chairman, can the record reflect that I was here today, Ron McCray?
Yes, we're going to go around the room to people who just walked in. Any other public comments? Okay, let's go. People just came to the room. If we miss anybody, start with them.
Yeah, Nick Chulos, Assistant County Administrative Officer from Monterey County.
And just going this way. Anybody new who came in? Mayor Roscoe?
Mayor Roscoe, Mayor for the City of Gonzales.
Mary Gage, San Juan City Council.
And I'm Enrique Arriola, San Benito County Health and Human Services Agency.
Robin McCray, CHS.
Behind you?
Anastasia Wyatt, County Monterey.
There's somebody else who came in.
Eric Lopez, Clínica de Salud.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
R3.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think we've covered everyone. Okay, let's move to need a motion for the consent agenda, which is just our minutes for March 27th.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Walker, second by Mayor Roscoe. Any discussion on the minutes? See none. All those in favor? Aye. Those against? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to category 1, Leadership Council membership changes. Approved Mayor Association membership recommendations. That's Mayor Nance Walker from Greenfield, Seaside Mayor Ian Oglesby, Councilmember Lisa Berkeley, City of Marina. Want to comment on this, Catherine?
Yeah, remember as you recall last meeting, we changed our language to say instead of the Mayor's Association appointing, they would recommend. So I just put it on the agenda just as a housekeeping.
Okay. So no vote needed?
No vote needed.
It's approved, it was already approved by the Mayor Association. Mayor Dutcher?
That's true, the Mayor's Association unanimously endorsed their appointments.
Okay, well, we will welcome the 3 new members. Thank you for joining us. Good to have you as part of our team here. Yeah. Can we give them all a round of applause, our 3 new members? Okay, California State budget update, Captain.
Just very briefly, when following the trailer bills, the May revise just came out in May. I'm also following with my HEAP working group, and it does appear that it looks as if there's going to be a follow-on HEAP if everything goes right. And it's going to be kind of broken into 2 ways. A portion of the funding will go to counties, and a portion of the funding will go to the COC, just like this funding. And there's also building in a lot of accountability for communities to meet their housing goals and not on plastic, molded plastic, that everything follows a critical.
Yeah, so the budget, the legislature will take up and vote on the budget by June 15th. So that's when all of us will have a definite know about what exactly was included in the state budget. But in the governor's May revise, there was some changes because at first he was kind of moving away from the COCs, which ours covers San Benito, Monterey County. He had a lot of negotiations with the big city mayors. I think it's the top 11, top 12 now. So he had agreed to give some money there. The new change was he's allocating out of his homelessness funding about $270 million that's going to be allocated to the counties. So Monterey and San Benito County will get their share based on the formula, population. And then the $100 million is proposed to come to the COCs. I just don't know if that's fully approved, how much would come to the COC.
Yeah, we don't know exactly. They say the formula will be the same, so we'll see.
Okay. Something to watch out for, and we'll bring an update at our next meeting about what that looks like for us, and for the counties that get the money also.
Louise, do we know what percentage of the funding pot we got for HEAP? I mean, is there a way to back into knowing what a number might be?
Well, there was $250 million on the plate, and we got 12. So whatever that math looks like.
Yeah.
Less than 5%.
Yeah. So that.
Foundation people pay for 5%.
So if it's 100 million, would be almost like 5 million, 4.8 million.
Something like that.
Yeah. But nonetheless, it's an important discussion to have because either if it's through the COC or through the counties, we have an ability to carry out a lot more or work with additional resources. But we'll get an update, we'll have the exact numbers by the time we have our next meeting. Okay, leaving home plan update.
There's been a small work group, really kudos to them and Michael Lisman as well, it's really kind of done together. You know, as you know, no place like home is coming down the pike and the plan has to be updated. So the plan is going to come to you at the next meeting for the update approval. And then the community will be in position to apply for no place like home, which is bricks and space, bricks and mortar money for homeless individuals within the homeless.
Okay, I didn't ask for questions. Any of the past two items, this is California State Budget or the Leave Me Home Plan update. Any questions or comments on any of these two items from anyone in the room? Any board members first, and then anyone in the room? See none? Okay, we'll move through most of the agenda here. Well, here we're going to go into the big item for today, which is the HEAP project selection. This is a point where I'm going to ask, as chair of this Continuum of Care, to ask Dan Baldwin to facilitate this discussion. This is a point in time where many of us who are conflicted out because either our local government agency or a nonprofit agency was an applicant applied, so we are having to recuse ourselves, and we're asking all of those folks to be able to step out of the room, to just keep it clear, you know, leave it to those who can vote, and the members of the public who remain in the room, and the rest of us, either you can hang out until after the meeting, or you can leave. I think we established quorum. We have quorum for quorum purposes. But maybe just so people know who's the list, go over this,
Yeah, so
and then we'll step out of
So
the room.
this is what the process looks like. So voting authority, so members affiliated with submitted applications will recuse themselves from the discussion and the vote. Will be asked to take a seat in the lobby of the veranda, which is a big breezeway down there. So these are the folks who are voting appropriate, except with one error. I do apologize if this is still correct. Cheryl, Cammy, are you still a board member of Community Homeless Solutions? You are conflicted. I'm so sorry.
And Darius is not here.
So, members affiliated with okay, you just said that, sorry. These are all the people who are recused and the reasons for their recusals. So, Dan Baldwin will walk the non-conflicted members through the initial discussion. I'm here for additional details should you need it. What you see in front of you are the HEAP applications. My hands are on them. If you have a list. Members of the public are welcome to observe this step, but please should refrain from participating at this point. There'll be an overview of applications and the ranking review panel scores and recommendations that have already been provided to non-conflicted members. They'll be reviewed again during this session. Members will have the ability to fully recommend fully funding, partially funding, not funding, or modifying recommendations from the ranking review panel. Then we'll move into the public comment section. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes. You will hear your alarm telling you it's 2 minutes, so we ask you to conclude. This is then non-conflicted members will receive your comments. This is not a question and answer period, so just receive them. The items will then come back to the non-conflicted members following the public comment. Final recommendations will be made. And I'm recommending that provisional in-pocket approvals for 1 or 2 projects not initially funded be selected as well. Just in case there's a project that's funding recommended and it can't meet contract, it underperforms, it looks like it's going to be reallocated. So you'll have the choice to say, we can reach down immediately to another project if they're ready to roll and not have to go through this whole project. Or you could say, then we recommended funding an existing project at a higher level. So that's going to be your determinations. And then the entire membership will reconvene and the final decisions will be shared. And then just a reminder that once this is all done, remember, I have to put a change order into the state of California. Remember, I originally said, just to get us on a check, you know, we're going to put this much money here, and so I have to get their approval before I can put anybody in contract. Questions from the membership?
On this process. Anyone?
I want to make a
Okay,
comment.
let's go with Mayor Gunter first, and then we'll work this way.
I don't mind stepping out. I understand the alleged conflict that is perceived here. But as one of the members that was interviewed by the grand jury and held accountable for the fact that no action was taken for housing for the homeless in the city of Salinas and in the county of Monterey, I'm hoping, as the panel reviews today, that you'll all be eligible to meet with the grand jury next year because they're going to invite us back for a second round. And so I hope that people all understand that you're all going to be given your opportunity to explain this process and your reasoning. Thank you.
So here.
So, for clarification, once action is taken, the conflicting members will be asked to come back just for results.
Just report on the results.
Okay, for clarification, visitors can stay through this process.
Correct.
Okay, so here's where, and yet, I'm on one of the board of directors and many of us have applied, so forth. So what I don't understand is a lot of the applicants, either employees or support system and all of that are actually in the audience, and yet they cannot be a part of the discussion. Why do we have to leave the room? I don't quite understand that, Catherine, because it's almost penalizing us. We're not going to say anything anyway. Why can't we just join the audience and observe like everybody else? If not, then everybody should leave and only those that are part of the voting panel. It's not fair to have a vote.
Well, there's a difference. When you're conflicted as an elected official, there's a difference between, you're a voting member. That's the difference between us and other people in the room. But when you're an elected official and you have a conflict, the state law requires actually to leave the room. In a traditional government meeting, you would have to say what your conflict is, and then you would have to completely step out of the room. Out of just taking extra precautionary measures, I don't want to have anybody after the fact to say that somehow there was an unfair deliberations because those who were actually conflicted voting members were in the room. And this is, I'm telling you, this is different. It's a new process. It's a new issue for our continuum of care. This is the first time we're ever doing it. So we're trying to do it right and avoid perhaps potential criticisms that could come afterwards by just making it very clear those who are conflicted voting members should just completely step out of the room.
Even though we're not elected?
What's that?
Even though we're not elected?
Yeah, but you're a conflicted voting member.
And Robert, we checked, Robert Rules of Order also says it.
And yet public can stay,
Yeah, public.
even though they're a part of that application process.
Really briefly, the concept is your body language as a voting member could influence voting. So if you're gone, you can't influence.
And just to further add, it could prevent somebody who wants to express either support or perhaps concerns about a certain proposal. It could prevent them from being able to be open with their comments if other voting members who have conflict are sitting around.
Even though they're in the audience already, though. Correct?
Well, the voting member won't be here.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hands up right there.
Just curious about applicants making public comment.
Applicants?
Applicants can make public comment, only 2 minutes.
Anyone else? Okay, at this point in time, Anastasia will recommend Mayor Walker. Anastasia?
Yeah, I just had a question. So if you go back to the state with your recommendations, how delayed will the time frame be to begin the project?
I don't know, I'm working behind the scenes to kind of set contract stuff together, but I don't know how long their change order process is. I know.
And do they need to look at the agreements that are signed later
No.
as well? No, so once you get their approval,
Yeah.
you can begin
Yeah.
We're hoping
spending
very
money.
quickly, just going to be the percentage changes. And
Yeah.
everything. Okay, Mayor Walker.
I've got a statement from Mayor Mike Navarro from Twin City. I regret that I'm unable to attend today. We had a great opportunity to bring more beds and infrastructure to our region to help get people off the streets. I want to thank everyone for all your hard work to get us there, to this vote. It shows it shows what can be accomplished when we work together towards a common goal.
Yeah. And he's at the Council of Governments Conference in Sacramento, so thank you for that statement.
Just take 30 seconds. From the city of Seaside, we definitely support the CHS application, but I want to distinguish our application from theirs, even though they're within the same city. So I just want to be clear about that. It's 2 separate asks.
That's understood.
Thank you so much.
Okay, if there's no other questions on process, this is the point in time when I ask all our conflicted board members to please step out of the room.
So I'm going to make a few introductory comments, and then Catherine is going to run through a couple of things, and then we'll get started. So I just want to get your opinion on something here. I'm not going to force it. But, and if it's not too inconvenient, it would really make sense if we all just sort of like moved into like more of a critical mass here rather than have like just sort of splintered and looking around the room this way. Is that all right with you guys?
Sure.
Just sort of move like go from there over
Where's
there.
Colas in the middle?
You don't have to do that. We're tired. Yeah, the voting member.
The voting members.
Say as you Thank you. So, I'm Dan Baldwin, Community Foundation for Monterey County. I drew the short straw here because we're grant makers, and I've been in a lot of meetings where grant applications have been received. That's essentially what the RFP responses are, grant applications to the HEAP program. And so have overseen a lot of these kinds of processes. I think we need to understand from the beginning that it's not going to be real easy. It might be, but it may not be real easy. There'll probably be a little bit of compromise that we're all going to have to make at the end of the day. I do want to re-emphasize, though, that we are now the voting members of the Leadership Council, and we are authorized to make these decisions. We're not making recommendations. We're making the decisions. And because we're the non-conflicted members of the Leadership Council, and the Leadership Council is the body that's authorized with making the decisions. So that's been left to us. Okay, so I've been in communication quite a bit with Catherine last week and this week. And there was this balancing act of trying to make sure that our voting members here were equipped with the right amount of information to make informed decisions. At the same time, not to drown everybody with the entire application, making it almost impossible to differentiate, make yourself have some clarity around making some decisions today. But for you all, I think you know this, and then I'm also speaking to the audience a little bit. And I apologize if I'm going to be like stepping on anything that I said. The RFP process was done primarily by Catherine, but with help, she sent it out to some folks to get feedback, and so there were a lot of eyes that went into the questions that got asked for the RFP. And then once all the RFPs came in, all these binders, there was a review committee of 4 that are, 3 of whom are experienced grant makers, and the 4th, an experienced affordable housing developer who went through all the applications and scored the applications. And so you've been provided with the total scores as they've come back from those reviewers. And and your information, they are listed in order of how they scored. Now there are different categories, obviously. Maria, I'll get that for you. And there are different categories. And what we'll do, I see she's already got it queued up here. We'll just have Catherine walk us through the categories. I think my modus operandi here is to see all of them now, and you can see how they're scored and ranked. And then we'll have to, I have some ideas on how we can go forward, but I'll wait until Catherine runs through this, and then I'll offer these ideas and see if you all agree that this is the best way forward. And so some of the beginning of this is going to have to be just a discussion about process a little bit. So go ahead, Catherine.
So, just one point of clarity, I just want to just clarify that I was not involved in the ranking review of the scoring process. I just want to remind everyone that you remember our allocation was a little under 12, or a little over 12, around $12 million, and we made the internal decision that even though we're one continuum of care, the dynamic on the ground of Monterey County and San Benito County are a little bit different. So there was a carve-out done based upon PIT numbers for Monterey County and San Benito County. So even though it's part of one big allocation, we're looking at them separately. 1.8 million for San Benito, and a little over 10 million for Monterey County. And also remember that there was a mandatory usage of funds, a minimum of 5% for unaccompanied youth. So having said that, let's walk through this. So the first section up here is San Benito County. Assuming that everything comes through contractually appropriate, then this is going to be a pretty easy one for you. There's 1.8 million available. All of the programs meet thresholds and laid out for 1.8, right? The second easy give for you should be unaccompanied youth, right? There was a little over $1 million available for Monterey County in this category. There was one request for $857,331. And I just want to make clear that in the application process, I made sure, remember, we made the decision, not we, but you, made the decision that category 3 of youth could be considered up to 5%, although it was not mandatory. So I wanted to make it extraordinarily clear in the application if an organization was actually applying for that youth money or category 3 money, and if they did not check yes, right? So we have one application in Monterey County for unaccompanied youth. That's a category in and of itself. Then you go into capital. Community Human Services is partnering with the Gathering Place to propose a shelter for women and children on the peninsula. They're looking for $1.2 million in rehab for capital improvements. Oh, and you'll see, let me just show you. You'll see over here is a score, right? So the ranking and the score. Community Homeless Solutions is asking for $260,000 to do capital improvements on 14 transitional housing units to be converted to permanent supportive housing, which will have to be approved by Health and Human Services before contract negotiations occur to make sure that it's appropriate to the conveyed property. The City of Salinas and the County of Monterey is seeking $6 million to build through construction and new homeless and emergency shelter. Those are the 3 capital projects. You move into, and there was $6 million and some change in that category. In the category of housing subsidies or rental assistance, there was $1 million and some change available. There were 3 applications. Central Coast Center for Independent Living is looking to do rental assistance and subsidies, basically a rapid rehousing program. They're seeking $579,000. Housing Resource Center is looking for rental assistance and rapid rehousing program for $310,000. Oregon Production is seeking $3 million to do rental assistance and basically a rapid rehousing program. Then you go into the really highly competitive services category. There's a 1.8 million, 1 million and some change available in this category, although remember you have the ability to modify. The city and county, City of Salinas and the County of Monterey are seeking $1 million for operating and supportive services for the current warming shelter located in Salinas, which is otherwise closed. Community Human Services is seeking $847,000 for supportive services and operating for the shelter, which is being proposed on the peninsula that you saw up there, capital, the same for the other shelter. Northeast Places of Franciscan Workers is seeking $610,000 for the street outreach team, an interdisciplinary approach with case management, social work, medical, and mental health services.
I apologize. Can you scroll up just one? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that got fixed.
Yeah, I fixed it. Sorry, we got an old thing, I put $1 million in there. All right. Central Coast Center for Independent Living is looking for housing navigation and supportive services to support rapid rehousing. The University Corporation of Monterey Bay CSUFB Learning Center is seeking $243,000 for a wellness project to offer health assessment, interviews, mental health, substance abuse assessment, and treatment and case management. Salvation Army on the Monterey Peninsula is seeking $100,000 to open the Good Samaritan Center on Saturdays. Every Saturday is now closed on weekends, which is a day center, it's a home day center. The city of Seaside submitted one application with 3 proposed projects. The first project was the city to do to put portable toilets and hand washing stations 24/7 in 2 locations in the city, and to do portable showers and laundry trailer 4 hours a day, 2 days a week. They all submitted as I guess a fiscal sponsor for a project for the village project to provide psychotherapeutic services, case management, and linkages services to include group therapy sessions, for homeless youth and families for $413,000. And also community partnership for youth to do school leadership, life skills, and job preparation, and after-school mentor or tutoring for $120,000, which totals $16 million. And so before you even start your discussion, what you want to carry over in your head, right, is that there are 2 in Monterey County, right? There are 2 surpluses. One is $151,557 for unaccompanied youth, right? Because they asked for 847 or whatever it was, right? And then since no one asked for category 3, that's $500,000, which had been reserved just in case. So what you're walking in the door with right now is a surplus of $652,002, right? So just remember that as you go through. So what your deficit is if you were to look at each category, and I'm not including San Benito County in this, and I'm not really including unaccompanied youth because they kind of are what they are, is in capital we have a little over $1 million surplus if you were to fund things fully, right? In subsidies, you have a $3 million delta because, again, you have one project when there was $1 million available who asked for triple that. And in services, you have a $2.8 million deficit as well. So when you add your deficits together, you have a $7 million deficit. So if you have $7 million more, you can fund everybody, right? Fully. So when you take your deficit minus the surplus, you get the sign of the devil. $6,666,000 deficit, and that's where your challenges come in, okay? Now, having said that, there were some options proposed. I wouldn't pay much attention to this part over here. where like, you know, you don't have to accept them, you can accept them, you can modify them, you can partially fund, you know, programs, you know, depending upon how far you step on the back road, you know, could be a program breaker, however you want to do it. So, that's where you're at. Dan, how do you want to walk it through?
So what I could-
Start with you, Dan?
Yeah, no, what I would like to do is just talk about that page. And I'm actually, I need to give you a little background. So when it says recommendations, recommendation 1, recommendation 2, the people who scored the applications for us were asked to make recommendations on funding. And, but only 2 did that. And I spoke to one of the people scoring, and they weren't really comfortable with the recommendation for funding. They were very comfortable with scoring the applications and ranking. So I'm actually going to suggest that we not pay any attention to that and just go to this. Now this spreadsheet, you know, the spreadsheets that look like this that you all hopefully you were able to print and bring, those are different than the ones. So that's too bad if everyone doesn't have that. Okay. This is a little easier to follow along, even though it doesn't have the longer program narrative that you got yesterday. But just from an ease of seeing how everything's on one page, it's a little easier to follow along. So I'm going to follow Catherine's recommendation here, and even though I think we'll call for a vote on all recommendations in total at the end, just by acclamation, can we agree that we will accept San Benito County's recommendation? The total, if you could scroll down just a tiny little bit. Oh, it's not, there it is. The 1.871 million, that is San Benito County's money. And that's not a change that we can make. We can't like take some of that and put it into Monterey County. So this is their recommendation, comes out to the dollar. I don't think we're in a position to really sort of argue the point. So should we just decide that we're going to move on San Benito County?
I agree.
Okay, really good. All right. So with reference to the second round of funding, it sounds like it's pretty assured. We don't know the exact amount. Based on just what I'm recalling for what Luis said, it sounds like it may be a similar amount of money if the formula is if the same formula is being used. So, but I do want to make, at least in my view, for the capital projects that we have in front of us today, there is a back-end timeline on being able to, a drop-dead date for when those projects have to be completed. So if we are going to be committed to the capital projects, as we look at those, I don't think we can, it would be a mistake to partially fund on a capital project and then say, well, then they'll get the rest of their money in the next go-around, because we actually, even if it gets approved, it could be a long time before that money becomes available, and then then they have to complete their project on this first round of funding. And so I would say that if we're going to be committed to capital, we need to do our best to try to fully fund the capital projects that we're going to approve and not think that they'll just, they'll catch up in the next round of funding. So, so the other thing I'd like to have you think about and recommend is that if you look at, again, the unaccompanied youth, there was 1,088,000, 8,000, a lot of eights up there, and we have one request. Should we just go by acclamation that we are going to accept that proposal? Okay. Okay? So this gets then to the next level, which is slightly more complicated. And that would be the subsidies. Yeah. There we go. So, and I'm not gonna, I put this one up here. You have a clear delineation here from the scoring, where the top two clearly have separated themselves from the third one. So the third score is 207, and then the top two are 383 and 414. If you were to, one of the other challenges is that the one that's ranked third, Orphan Productions, is $3.5 million. We have $1,008,000 that is allocated to this entire category. So if you were going to even fully fund the top category, the top two, just this is hypothetical, but that would leave, what, 167,000? I've got that written down here somewhere. Left over in this category. Well, $167,000 applied to a $3.5 million application doesn't really make a lot of sense, and given the way that there's a clear separation. Oh, I'm sorry, 119,000, you have it right there. So one of the things I think we could consider, again, is accepting the top two, and then being able to add in this $119,000 to our other considerations. So any feedback on that? Yeah, Elliot?
Just question, I mean, as we get through kind of the sequential goals, the question is, is there a deficit, or do we go back to a concept now, or
do we do what?
Are we going in concept now, or going for concrete goals?
These are concept right now.
Okay. Perfect.
Right. No, I'm just trying to, what I'm trying to do is take a quick run through, and so we can just sort of see context here, and these are just suggestions, and create, some sort of potential scenario that we could be dealing with. All right. So let's look at the capital.
Actually, Dad, did we get this set up just to close on the first week? Because I had this.
Yeah, you know what? I've known you for like 7 years. I can never hear you.
Can we say we didn't do a 7 where you just recommended that we take the first two? I don't know.
All right, that's a good point. So what is your feeling on this just in general? You want to have some discussion on that?
What did you say about the 119,000, the difference for?
Yeah, so if you took the top two, which is fully funded, and these are the rental assistance programs, which are really a critical part of HEAP programming. Then there's been $1,008,000 that's been dedicated to it. So if you took the top two, again hypothetically, then that would $119,638 would be available to apply to other applications.
So your surplus of 652 would then grow to 771.
So it could jump categories. You just
Yes,
have to
yeah, and then we have to resubmit to the state to say that we messed with our categories. I apologize, I cut you off. Is that?
So that makes a little more sense to me. And then the orphan, I think I emailed you, is this the parking?
Yes, it's currently the same parking program.
So it's 3 million, but it's not clear when it's going to be. I'm just wondering, how significant is this last language on the bottom? I'm inclined to do exactly what you described.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you
But
said.
it's good that we're having discussion, so feel
But
free.
and part of it is just because when I look at it, it seems like such a vast amount of money. And then there's this unsureness that I'm detecting.
Yeah, well, the truth of the matter is, it was an extraordinary ask. I'm not quite sure why it was that big. The top two, ranked 1 and 2, have experience in implementing these programs. The third application does not. This is not safe harbor.
There may be, this is not, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your last one.
This was not a proposed safe parking program, this was a rapid rehousing rental assistance program for orphan production. So Cecil and Housing Resource Center both have experience in delivering those programs, whereas the third project does not.
So it's a new provider? Who I do not know, well, I know, it's well, but, okay. It's a new group called Orphan Production.
Well, I'm not going to say it's a new group, it's not a new group.
It's a new assemblage of.
That's just their name, and they currently run the safe parking program.
Okay, over there on Corridor here, right, correct. It's still like, we don't have enough time today to begin to do this.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Yeah, and because in our grant world at the Community Foundation, we're always a little mystified when we're very clear on what the funding parameters are and like what the total amount we have available, and then we'll get an application that is just like seeking 2/3 of all the money available. And in this case, this is seeking 1/3 of all the money available in the entire Monterey County HEAP funding
Yeah,
program.
I mean, it's just, okay, I thought I was just listening. Okay, so, no, yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, you may have been, but you're correct. Right. So I should make one thing clear. So I've obviously spent quite a bit of time looking at this. Luis had let me know last week, I guess, that he was going to ask me to do this. So I thought, well, I do my best not to embarrass myself, so I try to get ready. But I have not spoken in detail to anyone. So this isn't like something that's been worked up in advance or anything. So these are just my thoughts that I'm bringing.
And they're asking for more than this section.
Right, correct, even as available.
Even as available, so it's sort of, there's reason thinking they didn't actually read it or something.
That's possible.
Or they have some other source of money that's not clear to me here.
There is no more source of money.
This is not filling a little gap.
No.
A big gap. Okay.
That clarifies everything
Okay,
else.
yeah, I'm just reading about this thing.
All right, so let's go to the capital.
So then again, before we go to capital, remember that if you have concurrence so far that you would recommend funding the top two, you are sitting now with a surplus of $771,640.
Right. Okay. So, again, these projects all the monies have to be expended by a certain period of time. But with capital projects, clearly there's a process that has to be gone through, and there's more of a timing urgency to make sure that if you really are wanting to fund these, you should fund them now and not think that they should get funded in a second round of funding. That's just sort of my view. Now, I think it's clear, we know that the two higher profile projects that have been discussed since the HEAP money became available, clearly the highest profile has been the Salinas Monterey County homeless shelter on Laurel Drive in Salinas has been out there. People have known about it. It's been in the press. Probably a more recent development, but one that has been certainly in the public eye and in the press. It's the one that's being led by Community Human Services, but this is a partnership with Community Human Services and Gathering for Women. And obviously, the balancing act here is that we have one that is in Salinas, and then we have one that is on the peninsula. And I can tell you that I think that's very important, and a lot of the conversations that are taking place leading up to this process, and especially just even today, are that we accommodate, we make investments both places. because obviously homelessness is a critical issue on the peninsula and in Salinas. Now, I'm also going to suggest that we look at Community Homeless Solutions. They actually scored second in the ranking. They have immediate ability to do capital improvements for 14 traditional housing units to be converted to permanent supportive housing. Does everybody know, you all know what permanent supportive housing is?
According to her definition, permanent supportive housing are homeless families with, because it's a family housing, with one member being disabled.
So, this actually is, from an efficiency standpoint, this is a modest investment that could bring a real bang in the amount of people that they would serve and the population that they would serve. And so here's just kind of where I came down on this, and I'll just sort of tee this up for you a little bit. I think our toughest decisions here today are going to be in the homeless services category, where we don't have all the money available, and there are a lot of viable applications. But given what we've already, just through acclamation, without a vote, decided, we can fully fund all three of these. And then we can, again, and this is just a little bit, it's a working process, it's a little bit by acclamation, nothing's been decided, but then now to show us the math, if we were to just like do this as a working understanding that we would fully fund these three, then that would give us, then we'd know the math and what we'd have to be looking at when we get to the homeless services. Now we can back up from there. There's no question about that. But it seems to me that it'd be more efficient for us to just like, okay, let's just agree to agree right now, if you all agree, that we could fully fund these three. And then if we got to go backwards later, well, then we can. But this way, we're not like wrangling over this and then wrangling again and wrangling back. We could just sort of flow this thing forward till we get to homeless services and then back up from there if we need to.
And just so you know, because I'm your numbers girl today, if you're 6.5 million and change, available in this category, if you add the three up, it's 7.5 million. Whereas a over a million delta, right? So if you were to apply your surpluses, your initial 652 and then that 119 equals 771, 640. If you were to apply all your surplus to this particular category, you would end up with an overall delta of $289,069.
Right. Now, I'm also going to tell you that because Luis had let me know I was going to do this, I've made some phone calls and done some research on some of the homeless services applications, which in this world, people ask for as much as they feel like they can reasonably ask for. But then the question becomes, like, is this really what they're going to need to be successful? Did they just sort of go all in the initial part? So there are in these conversations it's come out that we don't have to take all the homeless services, especially the top ranked ones, homeless services, numbers, budget requests at their full value. And that we can't, it seems to me that, that's where we can move some money back off of what they said if we wanted to fully fund the capital projects. And I should also mention that when we had the allocation discussion that landed like on what's available, 6505777, especially the electeds who like to see built environments, but there was a consensus among the group that with this money, capital was a real highly ranked priority. In fact, it was the #1 priority. Yeah, they came out of that conversation. So So since we only have 3 and they're all outstanding, they're all viable, I think with Community Homeless Solutions, there is a question, and Catherine, can you speak to that question that is coming up?
Yeah, the property, it's about contracting, right? And this maybe have been done already, but it wasn't in the application. And that the property, the actual buildings that are being proposed for conversion were obtained through the McKinney Act, conveyed through HHS, it's a long process, right? Create certain usage, transitional housing, right? So in order to accept this money, if they're funded, they need to provide to us a waiver from HHS that says, we allow you to use this property for permanent housing, and we further allow you to become a Section 8 landlord and accept that money as well, because that's what their proposal is. So if HHS says it's all fine and good, that's great, but we need to have that in writing.
Right. And if for some reason, if we were to grant this money and then they were not able to accomplish the project, that's one reason why Catherine says we have provisional projects that we can reallocate to. Yes, ma'am. And I'm sorry, you're...
I'm Dana.
You're Dana. Okay, thank you.
I wonder about this third one a little bit because we're not creating new housing for anybody. We're just, if I read it correctly, this is housing right now. It's just transitional housing.
Are you talking about Community
I'm
Homeless
sorry, this
Solutions?
the third one. Is it the third one or the second one? Second one.
It's
the third one, the second one. All right, what is it, if I'm just looking at it as an outsider.
These are great questions, so I'm glad you're asking the
What
question.
is the benefit we get in Marina or wherever to?
It depends on how you look at it. I mean, and this is completely up to you. The benefit is that it increases the stock of permanent housing, which we have a dearth of. We do not have enough of. On the other hand, to obtain that permanent housing, we lose 14 units of transitional housing. However, having said that, transitional housing is no longer the kind of model or the ideal. So when you're looking at HUD priorities, at least on the surface, it moves more towards their mandates and their initiatives. But again, that's your decision to make.
So I hadn't thought of this until right now. Our COC gets scored.
Correct.
We have, and and this is HUD money that comes here. Might this project actually help our overall score as we submit it to HUD?
Well, yeah, all of it.
And help guarantee more funding?
Well, what happened on the HUD front is that certain programs from Community Homeless Solutions are funded through, not fully funded, but are funded through HUD funding, HUD COC competition funding. So we would have to go to HUD and kind of reduce the numbers so that there's no double dipping involved, but that's just a contractual alteration that's easy enough to do. It's really about HHS. That's where the stickler is.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back real quick. With the surplus, you're saying we would have additional 200 or we'd be
No,
minus
if you
200
use
stuff?
every dime of your $700,000 and applied to this category, you would still be in the hole $289,000.
When we get to home services.
Correct.
We got some decisions.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
So make sure.
Can you tell me your name again?
Ignacio.
Ignacio.
Henry for
Henry. I'll just-
Ignacio.
Oh, right. I'm actually, sorry about that.
Like it loud and vocal, it is Henry, okay?
Yeah. Darn it. I had a thought.
You lost it, huh?
Oh, I know. So I will say that these are good numbers also. So because the county and the city met Friday, and in fact it was I wasn't there, but I talked to Lou Bauman today on the $6,018,000 because there was some concern that might be too high. Was there a way to cut it back? And there are some contingencies in there that are fairly broad in their budget, but it came back that's the number. That is the working number that they need to complete that project. The same is true with Community Human Services. Now, the one thing about this project that is that they, just so everybody, you may already know this, but the county, this project would be done in a county building in Seaside, and the county is essentially donating the building for this project. So there's going to be a $1 a year lease, and so that's a significant budget item that's actually not even reflected in the $1,287,000. And so it's actually a project that has a higher budget number, but through the county's donation, it's been able to reduce it to $1,287,000. I have not. I did speak. I've been speaking with people, and I've been involved in the conversation with this Monterey County one since its inception. I did not have an opportunity to speak to Reyes about the number 26728, but I'm assuming that is a number that is based on estimates that they received. I'm confident in
The application's out.
Yeah, because their experience of working with that would indicate that they would put a real number in there.
And also, just to clarify, with capital, there will be deed restrictions for these units. In 5 years or 10 years, I'll have to go back and look to them, I can't remember what we decided on. Which means that even though this is a 2-year funding stream, these organizations will promise in writing through legal documents saying, we will use this property for this purpose for, I think it's 5 years. And so, like when it sunsets and there's no HEAP 2, right?
Right.
Then it's a big commitment that they're taking on, because they're basically saying, I'm going to find some money somewhere.
Right. I also think one of the distinctions that that's important to me, because I'm a nonprofit guy, community foundation, is that these top 2 are being taken on by private nonprofits. And they don't have built-in, not that Salinas and Monterey County can just go find $6 million at the drop of a hat, but these are organizations that don't have those built-in funding streams that some of the others, that for instance, Salinas Monterey County might have. So, and I think we want to, and just from my view, I would want to be careful. I mean, one of the things that was said to me, well, why can't Community Homeless Solutions go out and raise the money? Well, they're constantly raising money. I mean, and this is what this HEAP money, this is what this program is for, is to alleviate that burden and create some capacity to go do something. Yeah, Raphael.
Well, the 3 things that came to mind about the Community Homeless Solutions. I know that here we've discussed that it's been problematic, sort of HUD view of just going straight to permanent housing, but that's what we have. One way I look at it, I see that figure, 260,000, almost 261, and 14, so for that amount, you can see 14 units in a sense, folks just being put there for that price. That seems like wow. Okay.
So real efficient use of the money, yeah.
Now, but with what you just said, would you describing the organizations and the fundraising, would you say that's a big asterisk to put on this, saying like they put themselves there, but in terms of their funding, there is some risk down the line, or?
No, I don't think that's what I was saying.
Okay.
No, I was saying that in order for them to, with all their current funding needs, to have to go raise this additionally to do this project, to come with the 260. The point of HEAP funding is to be able to help organizations do things that they wouldn't, to put things in place that we ordinarily wouldn't be able to put in place.
And the improvement, just for clarification, these properties were conveyed years and years and years ago, and they weren't new when they came. It was old Army property, right? So one thing that is really hard for nonprofits to gather the money up is to say, I gotta replace the balcony or blah, 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 or I've got to, what I mean, the roof is gonna, bleed water or something like that. So capital improvements,
Dan, I have
Do
a
we know
question.
where those
Comment.
houses are? Where are those houses?
In Marina.
And they would be on corridor? Yeah.
You bet.
Okay, go, Lance Walker, Mayor of Greenfield.
Yep.
This is my first time here. Mike Lamar couldn't be here, so he kind of gave me some bullet points. And you want to stay away from the recommended. I was told that we were going to vote on recommendation 1 or 2 on each of these capital projects, subsidies, and services. And what's your reasoning for not wanting to do that?
Yeah, so, Kathy, you can correct me, but I think Mike was misinformed on that. We were, those recommendations were never set up to be just up or down, yea or nay. So, again, those were recommendations that just came back from the people scoring, only they weren't derived from a group or anything. And 2 of the 4 didn't even send in recommendations because they didn't quite understand that that was their role. And I will tell you, and Catherine can, because she was the brunt of this phone call, on Friday morning, I called her and said I thought it was actually a real mistake to send those out because it took me 2 days to sort of figure out where those numbers had come from, and I was afraid that they might be confusing. So those are not actual like considered recommendations that are coming from any kind of a deliberative body. Ignacio.
We're going to go with Ignacio this time.
Yeah. Can you just tell you Hank?
This is going to be a good one.
All right.
So the 260 is fairly well done as far as what they get accomplished from 14 units. I'm curious on the 1.28, they're looking to have 38 beds. Would they fill that pretty quick? Do we know that?
I think that all of these projects will have no problems with capacity. In fact, there will probably be not enough beds.
Fully subscribed.
Yeah.
And that seems like a pretty fair number also, that 128. I would just say, I would recommend that we are looking to use that surplus, maybe bringing down the other project in Salinas by the number to make it all work. And I think the key here is definitely getting facilities set up and running as quickly as possible.
So I think this would be a good segue to get to because these are connected. A lot of the homeless services category.
Before we get to
Yeah.
I just want to voice my support for just that rough recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Looking at that, we may need to adjust in on this, but.
Right. So I'm sensing that there's, everybody is supportive of all 3.
Yes.
Now what we land on funding, we got to work that out, but we're supportive of all 3. Great.
Now,
Yeah, so this is going to be interesting.
and before Ken goes, you're looking at here on a spreadsheet, but the information that I gave you where you see the points.
There's more detail
on the far left, and
than
there's
what
more
Ignacio
detail.
has there.
You will see as you go down the ranking that the points really, there's a break.
Right.
And that break can be because of the quality of the application. Not all applications were stellar, put it that way. Or it could be the proposed program itself.
So this is the conundrum of grant making sometimes, is that maybe the application itself wasn't well written and well considered, and so it got ranked a certain way, but you might really like the project. And then some, there's issues of relevancy with some of the projects at the same time. And this is what we're just going to, now we're into, this is in the real meat of the matter.
Not zone down.
All right. So I want to make sure that there's some clarifications, particularly on these 3 that are up here, because these are the ones that I looked at most closely. So with the Salinas Monterey County, this is not programming for Laurel Drive. This is not programming for the capital project. This is programming for the existing warming shelters that are in the government center in Salinas. And so what this would do is that this would continue that programming until Laurel Drive is completed. And so this is sort of a bridge funding for this program.
So this is a center that's directly across from the post office.
Correct,
and-
right, where the portables, where the DA's office used to be, yeah. And this is 2 years of funding. Now, I'm just going to tell you right now, because there's no reason to wait to tell you, that as I've made phone calls about this, I've been told that they would be okay accepting 1 year funding. And so that frees up $500K if that's the way that the committee wanted to go, all right? And again, to consider, if there is, in fact, another round of HEAP funding, then that back end, this is one of those where that next level of funding could really provide that second year. And it wouldn't interfere with your ability to do things now. So in my working math, knowing that they would have been, that I was told that they would be willing to accept 1 year of funding, that freed up, $504,000.
And so that was like the Lubana?
I'm sorry, Elliot, I got it.
Was that with Lubana that you had that conversation?
No, that was actually with Luis.
Okay.
And actually Luis and Lou.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's out.
Yeah. So
I just wanted to be sure.
Lou was in my bad ear, Luis was in my good ear. Unfortunately, that's literal, bad ear, good.
Just as long as I'm not.
Yeah, we're always on the good side. All right. So the funding for community human services is 1 year of funding that starts in June 2020.
Right.
Because the capital money, it will be spent between June 2019 and June 2020, and then this is what's going to help operate the facility once it's up and running. Right. So I'm going to offer an insight. Well, it's what I view as an insight. You may think of it as not so insightful. So if you look at Salinas Monterey and what the city of Salinas is contributing to the project on Laurel, both from a capital standpoint, the work that they're doing inside of staff, and the obligation that they're going to take on from an operating standpoint once it's open, and the same for the county of Monterey. I did talk to Robin McCrae this morning to ask her, have any municipalities on the peninsula stepped up to say, we will support your operations for this project in Seaside? Because as we all know, homelessness doesn't actually have a jurisdiction. So if you're talking to a homeless person, they don't really care if they're in Seaside or Monterey or PG or Carmel or Marina. They're just trying to be in their best possible circumstance that they can make. And so my view is that even though this is a full year funding that they've asked for from HEAP, and this starts in July of 2020, I would not have a problem reducing that number and holding peninsula municipalities' feet to the fire to provide operating support for this, because they, even though it's located in Seaside, they will be ameliorating the homeless situation for all those communities. And I just feel like that those communities have a responsibility. Now, I have been told that that some of those communities probably will step forward. But as we're trying to just like find some wiggle room, little bit of capacity here and there. I don't think that this is, if we don't fully fund this, and again, remember, if there's another round of HEAP money, then this can also get funded because it starts next year and it starts 12, 14 months from now. This is potentially, part of this could get funded then. So I would suggest that we don't have to consider, it's not an up or down, fully fund or not fully fund. And if we made that decision, it wouldn't make or break their ability to have funding and to operate.
Do you have a number in mind?
That was my next question.
Well, I don't want to presuppose. I mean, I do have a number in mind.
This is over, we're talking about 847.
Yes.
Correct.
And it's over 4 years. But
1 year. It's over. It's 1 year funding that starts in June of 2020. And so it goes from 20 to 21.
2021, the capital, which we were...
The capital would be expended in 19 and 20.
Okay, and if they applied, if we cut them back to something and they applied for HEAP again, we're not hurting their chances of getting this second HEAP by having...
I don't think we are hurting their chances, and then I think in the interim, when I said this, that there should be some effort to get other public monies from peninsula communities to support this effort. The other thing that
they could match.
Right, and there also, this is again, it says Community Human Services, but this is again a partnership, Community Human Services and Gathering for Women. And just FYI, Gathering for Women is one of the most effective philanthropic engines that we have on the peninsula. So I think that I just think that there are ways to make this work that doesn't like really handicap their ability to be successful. With Dorothy's Place, I did have some back and forth with Jill Allen because I just wanted to know more about. And one of the things that you may hear is that there's a separate funding program called CESH, C-E-S-H, for which Catherine will tell me what the acronym means. Thank you.
It's money.
California
Emergency Solutions and
All right.
Housing.
Right, okay, so that's not as important as I thought. All right. Okay, so it's cash, just call it, it's more like, sounds like cash, all right? So,
Quick money.
So cash money is going to come through the city of Salinas, and it's going to be dedicated to Chinatown. And as you may know, Dorothy's Place Franciscan Workers is headquartered in Chinatown and most known for working with the homeless encampment in Chinatown. This project, as best I understand, is to allow them to build capacity to do work outside of Chinatown. Now, there could be some dedicated, particularly initially, to work in Chinatown, but as you know, there are encampments under overpasses, in parks, in Old Town, different places. And so this would allow them to build capacity to go have interventions with homeless people, provide case management in areas outside of Chinatown. So it's not so if you've heard of cash money, which sounds redundant, but if you've heard of cash money and think, oh, is this redundant to that? My understanding is that it's not redundant to that.
Well, I will say that, according to their application, they indicated in writing that, the beginnings of their program will be founded in Chinatown. And after they kind of establish and break out of synergy, that's when they'll slowly begin to work outside of Chinatown.
Can you scroll down for the next one? All right. So now you can see then you're starting to see, after ranking number 5, a real delineation in the scoring. So number 4 is Central Coast Center for Independent Living, which is also, you've already by acclamation decided that they would get a major subsidies grant. And so then they have another application here. They go by Cecil, so we can just call them Cecil. And then there's the University Corporation of Monterey Bay, Wellness Project, Health Assessment, Mental Health, Substance Abuse Assessment. And then you start to see a drop off in scoring. So what we're going to have to figure out is how much we want to use the rankings to make a clear delineation, because this is the first category other than the orphan productions category where there was a real delta between theirs, and that it also had other issues around the size of the application, the request and everything that made it a little easier decision. So how do we view this? So I'm just going to sort of throw this open right now to get your feedback on how much you feel like you may want to rely on the ranking system and just doing a cutoff versus what you may perceive as a project that's really compelling and is going to really get at the heart of something that maybe didn't score as highly as you hoped it would. I realize that's a lot of questions. I apologize for that. So, and Elliot, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you right on the spot here because you know more about this than probably almost everyone in the room.
So, I mean, I think, well, kind of two things come to mind. I mean, I think the top four are all solid. Experienced organizations that are
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
And I just to say that, as you go down, I'd be curious, the University Corporation, what's the overlap with the Chinatown services in general? I'm assuming that's for their Chinatown.
Correct.
When you get into portable toilets and washing stations, I can see why that drops down. The Salvation Army was the only one that surprised me.
Well, and just so you know, when I was the first step in the day centers and doing portable toilets, right? But again, you look at the scores and you see the scores, that is directly attributed to the quality of the application. I mean, one of those applications, I really should have sent it back and not accepted it.
I just would say, respecting the rankings is important. So, looking to those top three, which stand significantly above the other.
Okay, so I can say who ranked them.
Sure.
Yeah. So the rankers. One of them's laughing very loudly right now. Vice President for Grants and Programs at the Community Foundation, Laurel Lee Alexander. Director of Philanthropy, which is their title for grant making at the Monterey Peninsula Foundation, Mary Gunn. Katie Castagna, CEO of the United Way, and Betsy Wilson with Mid-Penn Housing. And
we had Manny Gonzalez, just so you know, until I sent him all the applications, and he realized his wife was written into one of them, and he didn't know it.
Yeah.
So he had to bow out for a conflict.
Right. So these are people, and Betsy was especially included because there are things related to housing in here and construction. But the other three, from a programmatic standpoint, are highly experienced at reading applications and scoring applications. So I think you can trust their judgment and as a response to the application. But I think, again, sometimes because we deal with this sometimes, that sometimes you knock your head against the wall because the application isn't any good. I mean, or isn't what you hoped it would be, even though you liked the project. And so, but you're having to respond to what it is they're telling you in the application. So can you go back up? So if we were to just go, like, say, split this in half, 500,000 and 444. And then think about something in line here with in the range of say 300,000. something like that. That still really only leaves about $150,000, $200,000, I think, by the math that I was doing. You got a number?
So 300 for Dorothy's Franciscan, when you're
So the way I worked the math out was, given the other assumptions, is that it would be 500, 300, and then 167, and that would exhaust our funding. And
If you, just for your number, so you cut your project number 1 to 500, 444, you cut the second to 300, it equals 800 to 444, so you would have 280,444 left. From the 1,008, but remember you still have a delta 2 amount.
Okay, so when I did my math, and I already had those other carryovers, I came up with 500, 300, and 167 in all money expended. So we might have we might have a difference in that.
What was that last one? Number?
167. This is proof that we did not work this out in advance.
I was talking about this on the meeting.
So can I recommend a methodology here?
You do whatever you want.
All right. Yeah, so how about if we just go back to the beginning and actually just work on the numbers we approved and add them all up and see what they come to.
$104,789.
If we do.
If you plug as you said you were going to fund it.
5, 3, and 167, that's $104,000 total.
Correct.
So we'll have to compare math at some point. But so then that means that the numbers that I put out there are off a little bit. So before then we wind down on those numbers, what's the general reaction to how we're looking at homeless services and the where we're cutting off? I realize that the thing that's kind of problematic is that, what do we have, like 9 applications in homeless services, and in this scenario, we're only funding 3. Now, remembering again that there is going to be, in all probability, not guaranteed, another round of money coming through the HEAP program where these other projects would have opportunity to apply. And the good news for all of you is that you're going to be back here deciding on those as well. So, yes, sir, Raphael.
We did have a discussion, I think it was last year, at the beginning of this process, about, that general principle of you spread out a lot and get a lot of so-so. Hunker down on a few and really just...
Right, create impact.
Yeah, and so if our responsibility is to help create success for these missions, then that's one way to look at deciding to just focus on 3. And even there, we're still making some adjustments.
Right. So unfortunately, if Catherine's math is correct, not that Catherine's unfortunate anyway, but if Catherine's math is correct, then that would only leave about $59,000 for this. Now, in which case you would have to ask, is that a good use of that money? The other thing, now this also opens up the question, you could go back, like for instance, into the subsidies category, and where you're fully funding 2 projects, and if you pull $50,000 each out of those 2 projects to create more here so that you could get actual bang through the Dorothy's Place project, that's something that we could do. And now this starts to get into a little bit of the hair-raising aspect of doing this, where you start to pick pieces away from other things that we've agreed to. Hey, Marina.
Yeah, my only concern would be that there's that big gap, and if that service provider is even able to provide
Right.
services at that level, at that
Right.
lower level.
Right, I think that's a great question. So I was even concerned with my math at 167, whether that would be enough here. I do believe that this, taking agreeing up front to a 50% reduction from their application is really good faith on the part of Salinas, Monterey County. This is already a pretty significant drop here from 847 to 300,000.
Four.
We also do have the second round.
We're going down to 3, not 4. Did I have that one?
Yeah, so right now we're at 3. If we went one more down, we would really be diluting the impact on these. The other thing that we talked about earlier is that the Center for Independent Living, Cecil, is right now fully funded up in their other categories. So so it's a tough one. If as hard as it sounds right now, because I have a really deep respect for Dorothy's Place and the work that they're doing there. If it really is only $59,000, that we really have left, I would probably allocate it here, put it back into community human services, and then maybe, and then work real hard to make sure that Franciscan workers is a high priority in the trying to HEAP funding.
Then if I could just give you another option, just because
Sure.
I thought the leverage on, just having the jurisdictions participate in services or in the peninsula shelters, I think it's important that people have skin in the game. One of the things that, just from my experience, was always hard to fund and important to fund was the rapid housing. So I also would, consider, going back and saying, could we put more funding for the rapid housing category? Because that really gives people when you're placed in rapid housing and you have a house over your head, experience with future employment, being able to overcome issues is much stronger than in the shelter.
So I do have a question, though, just to make sure I'm understanding. The rapid rehousing projects, are there more than the 2 that are in the subsidies category? Because we're already fully funding those, and so to actually cut here and then add money in above what they applied for, I think that might be problematic.
Well, that is what I'm about.
Right.
I agree.
Okay, so let's just do a little bit of a housekeeping right now. So are we all clear on what we agreed to up to this point?
Yes.
Capital projects, subsidies, unaccompanied youth, the money moving around, what we have available here. So I think what we're actually probably, I'm going to just throw it out here just again to get your reaction, is if the number really is 59,000, that we would have only had left here, that we just added in here, because we'd already cut them well more than 50%. And so that would bring them up to 359,000, which is still less than 50% of their initial request. And then do this one at 50%. All of these would be eligible for a next round of HEAP funding. Okay, so any response to that? Negatively or
Just
positively?
on clarity, we're talking about the 1 million. You're looking at, the next one is 500.
So I would be looking at this at $500,044.
Goodness, you got actually, I'm sorry, I turned my numbers 3 times. You actually have a shortfall of $271,000.
Okay. Well, okay. So,
And that's factoring in that 167.
right. Okay. This, we need to take about a 5-minute break, I think.
Yeah, sure.
For you and I to compare our numbers, because I really did a lot of pencil dust today. to give
Take
our-
a break and then let's come back. We'll come back.
Right. All right. Now I know this sounds silly, and I hate to tell you this, but you can't go talk to anybody that's sitting out there. So Laurel and I work together every day, and by every day I mean this lady. And she knows that I'm pretty snotty about my math.
Yes, unfortunately.
However, I was wrong.
What was that?
But I was like the Apollo 13 engineers, the way I was calculating.
I'm never doing that. That's why I have brand new tape.
Right. So here's one way of looking at this. If you agree to everything else that we have already agreed to, with subsidies, capital, unsheltered youth, the migration of money, if we just leave that alone, coming into this category, we have 690, what do we have?
695,822.
We have 695,822. So that means we can just allocate 695,822 here, or we can go back and sort of take some money from other projects and apply it to homeless services. So let's just start with that question. Is there a general sense among the voters here that we're just going to we'll just allocate 695 and then know that all these projects will be eligible for a next round of HEAP funding? Or do we want to go back and look at some of our previous, not decisions, but just sort of acclamations that we made, agreements that we made about previous funding, and move some of it forward to this category?
Say, we stay where we're at, focus on this, the 695 here.
Yes, you there too?
There was a priority based on capital.
There was.
So we're not going to go mess with that.
That's correct.
Okay, so, yeah.
Eric? All right. Okay. Ready?
So if you take, this is just again numbers for your own brain. So if you take the top two, right, and you take the 695,822, if you were to divide it in half, right, you would end up with an allocation for each project of 347,911. Just throwing it out there, just in case somebody wants to know.
I actually think that's a good way of looking at it. So it allows community healing services, a year to, how much did you get?
347,911.
All right, so I'm going to alter that just a hair. We could stick with 300,000 here, and then we could add that $47,000 back up here. Because this is operating money that they're going to need immediately, and this is operating money that begins in June of 2020. How do we feel about that?
I agree. You said just 300,000.
300 here and the balance up there.
Then that would fund the other project at 395,822.
All right. Well, I don't think I need to go back and review everything. I think we got it. So we're done with this part of the meeting. I don't facilitate public comment. And so, so I think we're done with this, and we'll move on to the next section.
So,
Thank you, everybody.
So public comment. Can I get an indicator by hand how many people are going to want to speak? 1, Okay, let's go. You will hear the buzzer go off at 2 minutes. Go ahead, Emily.
My name is Hope Tadima. I'm with Orphan Productions. I wanted to comment on fears you may have about hallucinating about the number or whether we read it. Our primary, first of all, we've been in business for 6 years. We're steadily growing. It wasn't our intention that we would suddenly work at capacity on housing, but we wanted to make sure Monterey County homeless got those funds. What if nobody applied? So while we calculated how much per person, what is our maximum we could carry, we don't want to max. But if it means this county loses housing, rapid rehousing funds, we would do it. So I apologize if it was startling. There is no hallucination. We assumed a greater comfort level with scaling us down than there is. That was a good takeaway for me. Because obviously if we got $50,000, we would serve $50,000 for people. So thank you for your time and attention to our application. I just wanted to assure you that we're not hallucinating. We did read it, and we're very excited that someone is going to do it. That's the main thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a comment?
Hi, again, Regina Alvarez with CISO, and on behalf of CISO, we want to thank you for providing the support to CISO. And just a little clarification on the applications, CISO applied for the rapid housing and the services. So the rapid housing program will go directly to the client, to the consumer. None of them might be in the state as CISO. So the 300 plus will be directly to the client. It will be for the rental assistance up to 6 months, for about 35 consumers, I believe. And then losing the services, that means that CISO will have to look for another funding to sustain or hire staff to provide that rapid housing service.
Other public comment?
Can I make a comment? I just have 2 things that I wanted to point out in doing the application. So one of them is that, one of the 3
Betsy,
capital...
can you introduce yourself?
I'm Betsy Wilson with Mid-Penn Housing Corporation. I was one of the reviewers of the applications. And just 2 things for your consideration since you're dealing with small amounts to move around at this point. In the capital projects, the Community Human Services application is proposing to turn housing into permanent housing and leverage Section 8 income. And I think it's reasonable to assume that they can take on some debt with that Section 8.
Community homeless.
Community homeless solutions, thank you, sorry. So I think they should be able to take on some debt. That was a comment I made in the application. So I think that you could reduce that and they can still do that deal by up to 20%. They should be able to service the loan on that thing. And then the second comment was Community Human Services this time. Notably for their shelter, I believe the county said that the county would not provide any additional financial assistance. And so when we're talking about getting the community to contribute, they're agreed to this major constraint on their ability to find funds to operate. So I feel more urgency there to try to support their operations because the county has said, no, we're giving you the facility and that's all you get. So those were the 2 things I wanted to say.
Other public comment? Yes.
I didn't hear, I know if you'd not seen questions, right, Catherine, but maybe.
Correct, they're just receiving your.
So I know when we had sat in on some of the presentations about the shelter for Seaside Community Human Services had presented a capital budget of about $500,000. And I was wondering personally why that ended up at $1.2 million, but maybe that's been addressed elsewhere.
Chris?
Yeah, I wanted to note that our other transitional housing programs or projects that we have on Lexington Court on Whitmire, we're not only doing those 14 units, but we're expanding to our other housing. So it's going to be a lot more in permanent housing and 10-year plan, and the nation is going in that. I mean, that's the direction and that's the goal is permanent housing. So we're not only doing 14 units of permanent housing. So we're going to be assuming other costs, but we said those are the 14 units that absolutely need to be revamped, repaired, and we're seeking those $260,000. I think that's a great investment for permanent housing.
Other public comment?
Yeah, just a quick one. The projects I'm interested in got funded. Thank you. The project I'd be concerned about is Dorothy's Kitchen. So I've been a volunteer. My family's been a volunteer for there forever, waiting for any of the other programs existed. And my kids now serve because they served at Dorothy's Kitchen. They're now all in social services and doing great things. So I'd rethink, $100,000 would be huge for them to have the third one also funded that much.
Other public comments? Yes. Jill Allen with Dorothy's Place. I respect the decision of the council, not trying to reverse anything. I just wanted to say that in the description that you see on the screen and in front of you, it's a little incomplete. We looked at the needs of the community and decided that we would make a very collaborative proposal. There's just not Dorothy's Place there, but there's also 7 other providers and entities that have supported this collaboration with commitment letters. We realize that if we're going to be effective in getting people out of encampment lifestyles and putting them into safe shelter, that the most disabled of those people are people that are struggling with major chronic illnesses turning into acute illnesses and mental health and addiction issues. We believe that it is absolutely paramount that we pair health services with social services to effectively reach these people and not waste the community's money and time. So I wanted just to let you know that that's what that proposal was supporting, but again, I will respect the decision of the council. Other public comments? Seeing none, thank you very much. So Dan, you have one more big piece of work, and that is to find your provisional budget. Your top.
Right, okay. So, based on what we heard, we didn't really talk about any contingencies as we went along. However, what seems clear is that this is the category that we just are a little frustrated with, that we didn't have all the funds that we hoped to have. Because even at $1 million and $889, it still would have been very difficult to fund here. So again, I'm just going to put this out there, that if we need a provisional project because of an inability to perform on any of the things that we will approve today, my suggestion is that we look at Dorothy's Place as the provisional project. And is there a dollar amount that we?
I would not leave it open.
Okay. And given the size of this ask, I would suggest. And then, frankly, can you scroll down one more? I would then say, if for some reason it exceeds that, we just sort of work our way down this list. And because this is how they were scored by the reviewers. Is everybody okay with that?
Makes sense.
All right.
I agree.
So do you want to hear what you've decided? So the act form you decided?
Yeah, so I have a suggestion. Can you just go back up to the top, and we'll do it visually. Start where we started.
Yeah, so we're looking at San Diego County funding 1.871098 based upon categories 1, 2, 3, and 4 rates. Total amount. You're looking at an MPU at 857,331, ranked number 1 because it is number 1. Subsidies, I think we did do that.
We did.
Putting the top two, Cecil at 579,250, Housing Resource Center at 310. There it is. Capital, Community Human Services at 1287658, Community Home Solutions 26728, and Salinas Monterey County 6,018,100. And then services, we have, so sorry, this is a little different. We have Salinas Monterey County at 395,822. Community Human Services at 300,000, and everything in pocket is based upon the ranking after that.
Within this category.
Within that category, yes. Which equals a little over $10 million in change.
Okay. So the process here is that I'm going to ask for a motion and then a second, and then we'll have opportunity for discussion. So I'll accept a motion.
So
Second? Second. That was Lance. All right, discussion?
Good job.
All right, thank you all. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
So you can bring your dictionary back.
We have to start again.
Yes.
I have a board club meeting because my alternate is here, so since we already voted.
Where'd the agenda go? You got one? I guess they're done then, huh? Just have to formally come back to adjourn. Looks like we did everything on there.
All right. We haven't got all your, hey, you guys aren't throwing tomatoes, so that's pretty good. We saw you coming at
So do you lose any money in the bathroom there?
We bought it. Catch it up. Can I do a little bit now?
Welcome back, everyone.
All right.
Since this is the last and only time that Luis will ever allow me to have the floor. Yeah. So, for members of the Leadership Council, we had a highly productive and it was very efficient, even though it took, almost 90 minutes to get through it. Everyone participated. There were a lot of great questions. I will just say that we tried our best to follow the council's initial lead of funding capital projects, and as that a priority. And as you can imagine, we didn't have enough money to go around at the end of the day. We did take into consideration that there is a high probability of another round of HEAP funding, and that some of the things that we looked at, maybe from a timing standpoint, might be eligible for that HEAP funding. And we actually talked a little bit about some of the priorities that we would look at should that next round of HEAP funding come along. So anyone else want to mention it? I don't want to prolong this. Who's here? Okay.
Okay, so based upon the order in which we went, we started first with San Benito County, recommended approved funding of 1.871098, using the ranking system 1 through 4 as established. Unaccompanied youth, community youth services, recommend approval for funding, was approved for funding for 857,331, and again, that's the unaccompanied youth category. Subsidies. The approval was to fund the first 2 projects, ranked 1 and 2. Central Coast Center for Independent Living at 579,250. Housing Resource Center at 310. And capital, with a lot of discussion, moving some surpluses around. It was determined to fund community human services at 1.287658. Community Homeless Solutions 26728, and the Salinas Monterey County Shelter 6,018,100. And then we really got into the weeds with services. Sorry, I will take my notes. And the decision was to fund the Salinas Monterey County Services application of $395,822, to fund community human services of $300,000. And that's when we hit our max. And the vote was to fund provisionally, in case any of the projects discussed today cannot ramp up, cannot perform, whatever, based upon the order of ranking as submitted. We put it all together, and that is 10 million and some change for Monterey County, and I believe 1.8 million for San Diego County.
You can round of applause. All right, I guess any last comments, everybody?
When will this be posted?
I'll do a press release
That'd be great.
by the end of the week and get it out there, and, you know, you can like move it wherever you want to move it, right? And of course, we post it on our website, and I'll work on the change.
And you'll email the press release to all of us too?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Okay, everybody, I want to really thank you. We've come a long way on this. This is the first time. I think we feel like we did as good as we could under limited resources and tried to find a win-win. And we want to keep that spirit of cooperation when the next round of money comes in. And certainly, on the county standpoint, from my point of view, I want to keep that commitment too, also to keep doing work with money that also might come to the county. And we invite your participation in that down the road also. So with that, if there's no other last comments, I want to thank you, and we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you. And thank you, Dan Baldwin, for